Hi, I'm Maddie Hillman, and I'm going to be talking you through my costume design process for Radium Girls. The very first thing that I did was we started production meetings with the directors. So here's some notes from it. And at this very first production meeting, they told us their overall design statement for the show, which was, we want a stage that is captivating and simple. We want to rely more on the lights and costumes to carry the show. The very first thing that I personally did was I started reading through the script to get a feel for the characters and who their motivations are, and also I started watching other schools' performances and productions of Radium Girls. The very first thing that I noticed that was going to be a challenge for this show is that we have 10 actors and actresses playing these parts, and there's 35 characters. So my very first idea was that everyone have sort of base outfit and then things they can take on and off. That way they're able to make their changes. But that was definitely a constraint I had to think about. The next thing that I did was I started researching the time period. So for men, I started researching their wingtip shoes, their like boater style hats, their sort of wider leg pants, double-breasted suits. And then for women, their cloche, tight-fitting style hats, the drop waist silhouette, and then other silhouette things. So that's something I started looking at, and then also how that changes by class, working class versus people with more money. That way I could reflect it upon the different characters that are in this show. I, unfortunately, was unable to attend our first costume sourcing trip to a local community theater, which was very important when I was keeping my budget. Overall, I had a $1,000 budget, and I allotted $375 for renting things from a local community theater, $200 for T-strap shoes, and then the rest of my budget was to buy things from the 1920s that we could keep in our costume shop, because a main problem that I had was our costume shop had nothing time period appropriate from the 1920s, so we had to rent or buy almost everything that all of our actors wore. So for this first trip, I took my research and I compiled a list of all of the exact things that I wanted. That's for women. And then the men, everything I wanted exactly, and then in what sizes and styles that I wanted. And I also put together, before they left, my original costume plot. So it looked like this. When they came back with all of the things, I started to do my first sketches, and I also started trying things on actors and actresses, seeing what fit and what didn't, and if there was any alterations that could be made to these costumes or what worked for each person. One thing that was very important to me as I was going through was having colors tell the story of my show and who each person was as a character. So for Grace, the protagonist, she's very innocent and naive at the beginning of the show. She's just happy to work with her friends and doesn't really know the dangers of radium. So I used purple and then red to show her innocence and naivety at the beginning of the show, because this is her outfit at the beginning. And then this is Reader. He, as a character, becomes darker throughout the show and makes more morally questionable decisions. So this is his Act 2 outfit. So I put him in a suit that was darker to show his transition to being a darker character. And then I also gave him a green tie so that I could show how he's connected to radium. This is Catherine, and I put her in black and gray because this is her outfit as she's sort of decaying in a wheelchair. So I wanted to use these colors to show how she is decaying and how she's affected from the radium. This is Marie Curie. I put her in black because she's an omen of death to me. She is the discoverer of radium, and so to me, ultimately, she's the reason all these girls are dying. So I wanted her as like an Easter egg, an omen of death. And then this is Irene. She's the first of the girls to die for radium, so I wanted her in green to show her connection to radium and how she was affected by it. So I also started coming up with lab coats and hats for both the girls and the guys, and other time period appropriate like pieces they can take on and off, so ties, accessories, things like that. One of the challenges that I ran into was the person doing the hair had all of these girls in buns at the back of their head really high up, and that just doesn't work with all of the close to the head time period appropriate hats for women. So I had to communicate with her and ask her to move the buns down in order for the girls to be able to wear their hats. Another problem I had was I needed men in hats because they all wore hats, but all of our actors have abnormally large heads, and we don't have very many 1920s men's hats to start with. So a big challenge was finding time period appropriate hats that fit their heads. Our school does Tech Week a little differently. We start it 2 full weeks before our opening night. And the very first time that I went on and everyone had their costumes on stage, the directors were not very fond of the costumes. People weren't making their quick changes from one scene to another. And so they basically said, we need to start over. So we went back to the drawing board, and everyone needs a base outfit. So all the men are going to have pants and a shirt that they wear, and all the girls are going to have either a dress or a skirt and a blouse that they wear, which was my original plan, but it had kind of gotten lost as I was making all of these costumes and trying to work around my challenges. So I ended up going on a costume sourcing trip with the directors, and I really felt like I'd been able to grow into my role and be like, that is the blouse I want, or that is the skirt I want, or that doesn't work for that character, or oh, that I want this to be able to show who they are. So I ended up with my final costume sketches. So this is Marie Curie when she comes to New York. I did lots of research with her about what the actual Marie Curie wore because I wanted to show she's sort of a different time period and way of dressing. I really wanted to be able to accurately represent her. And then I used black as my omen of death. This is Irene when she's in the very first scene. I used her silhouette to be able to show how she's a little more mature than the other girls, but then the white to show how she's still innocent. And then I used the green to represent the radium, of course. This is Catherine. I used the black and gray to represent how she's dying. And then I also used the silhouette to represent how she can't really move. This is Grace. I used the silhouette and the colors to represent her innocence and how she's a working class girl. And then I use Reader. I use his style of suit to represent how he's become richer from benefiting off of the girls and them decaying off of the radium. And then I also ended up making final costume plots for Act 1 and Act 2. In the end, I felt like I was really able to grow into my role, and in the future, I will definitely have better communication with the directors. Thank you.